Today's topic is hygiene in medieval Europe. But I'm warning you, if you're watching this video while eating, you're making a mistake. Did you know that while you're enjoying that nice warm bath at home today, there was a time in history when bathing was considered a great sin? Yes, you heard that right. You know those noble knights in TV shows and movies who always look so clean and shiny, and those kings living in all their splendor in the palace? Well, in reality, they were literally stinking to high heaven. It all began in the early Middle Ages, when some people who had dedicated themselves entirely to religion developed an incredible logic. During this period, bathing was officially considered a sin because it was seen as giving the body a pleasure. Saint Elizabeth never bathed her entire life. Yes, you heard that right. After years of not bathing, the people around her could no longer stand it and convinced her to take a bath. But the story doesn't end there. The holy woman, the moment she touched the water, screamed, "What a sin I have committed," and bolted from the bath, spending hours in repentance. That said, things were thankfully a bit better among the common people who had little to do with religion. Peasants and knights in particular bathed frequently. In fact, during that era, women would serve knights while they bathed. You can even see these scenes in old miniatures at the Heidelberg University Library. For the rest of the population, however, cleanliness consisted merely of briefly wetting one's hands and face. Forget about a sink. The Housewives Dictionary, written in 1729, mentions a basin and a pitcher, but the word sink doesn't even appear. A little water was poured from the pitcher into the palm, the face was quickly rubbed, and that was it. By the 16th century, things had really gone off the rails. As syphilis began to spread rapidly across Europe, public bathhouses were shut down one by one on the grounds that they were breeding grounds for germs. After that, few people bothered to keep up with hygiene. The Italians of the Renaissance described Northern Europeans, and especially the Germans, as horribly filthy. But in reality, they didn't bathe every day either. In 1490, the city of Nuremberg made a historic decision. They would have dead pigs, dogs, cats, chickens, and rats collected from the streets every day. When the public heard this news, they wrote songs. Just think about it. If the city announced today, "We're opening a new subway line," we wouldn't be this excited. But back then, simply saying, "We're collecting dead pigs from the streets," was enough. People were composing songs. During the same period, pigs roamed freely in the streets of Berlin. This situation continued until 1681. Moreover, until 1671, villagers coming into the city were required to load a cart with trash and take it out of the city on their way back. A sort of trash tax. They'd come in and take the trash out, hospitality to the max. Now let's look at Paris, the city of romance, art and love. In 1185, while King Philip Augustus of France was watching his beloved Paris from his palace window, a cart passed by on the street, stirring up the mud and filth. Such a horrific putrid stench spread that even the king, who was used to that foul air, fainted right there on the spot. Upon this, the king immediately ordered that several major streets be paved with sidewalks. Until 1697, everyone living in Paris threw trash, urine, and all manner of filth out the window onto the street day and night. You had to be lucky not to have something fall on your head while walking down the street. During Louis's reign, there was a slightly more advanced system. The window would open, someone would quickly shout, "Watch out, water," and then empty the chamber pot. This was actually a warning system. The Parisians would warn you before getting you wet. Isn't that very polite? And do you know what was done to get rid of all that filth from the streets? The first major street cleanup in Paris took place in 1666. It was considered such a momentous event that poems were written and medals were minted. Poems just because the streets were cleaned. Today we complain that the trash can is full, but back then they were writing poetry about the streets being cleaned. Fortunately, in the 17th century, A genius invented the toilet, giving the palaces some breathing room. Still, until 1780, a black, filthy stream of household waste flowed down the middle of Paris's streets, and people would jump over these little streams, stepping on the stones. One of history's most absurd and tragic cleaning accidents occurred in 1183 at Erfurt Castle. Directly beneath the castle's main assembly hall lay a massive sewage pit. When Emperor Frederick Barbarossa gathered the nobility in this hall for a parliamentary session, the floor couldn't bear the immense weight and collapsed with a crunch. A massive crowd, including 8 princes, dozens of nobles, and over 100 knights, plunged into the horrific sewage pit below and drowned. Emperor Barbarossa, however, managed to save his life by leaping out the window at the last moment. As you can see, even being a nobleman couldn't protect you from a filthy death back then. So when did all this get fixed? Slowly, very slowly. Dumping waste out the window was banned in 1780. Sewage flowed through the streets until the 19th century. The modern toilet was invented in England in the 17th century, but it was still absent from the Swedish palace in the early 20th century. Visiting princes would go behind a screen in the hallway. Now let's move on to hospitals. If a strong stomach, keep reading. In 1788, Surgeon Tenon inspected the Hôtel Dieu hospital in Paris and wrote the following in his report. There are over 2,600 patients. 6 people were lying in beds just 1 meter wide, 3 at the head, 3 at the foot, so one person's feet were right in front of another's face. Surgeries were performed in full view of the other patients. The clothes of the deceased were washed and then put back on the patients, and everyone who died in this hospital died of infection, so you go in sick and you come out even sicker. Please remember this the next time you hear someone complain, "I went to the hospital and caught the flu." Now let's talk about cemeteries. The Innocent Cemetery in Paris had been in use for 1,000 years. In 1746, a general who visited the site wrote that he saw swarms of green carrion flies on the graves. In 1765, residents living nearby filed a complaint with the government stating, "The stench from the cemetery is so intense that food at home spoils within 2 hours." In 2 hours, no refrigerator, but there was no need for one anyway. If you're next to a cemetery, nothing stays fresh for long anyway. Even Voltaire wrote a letter on the subject and said, "The stench of the dead in churches is killing the living." Even Voltaire had had enough. Voltaire. Now think about this. Today we look down on someone who doesn't take a shower, or who goes 2-3 days without washing. Yet our ancestors considered this a virtue. How lucky we are. After watching this video today, take a shower. A long one, lather up with soap, breathe in the scent of the shampoo, and tell yourself, "I'm so glad I was born today." If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. Right, I'm trying to understand Saint Elizabeth, but I can't in the comments section. See you in the next video.